I've been with the Office of the Secretary of State for 2.5 years, but as noted, done voter engagement work since 2016. I will say this is sort of a blending of some of my worlds that I'm very passionate about, and so this setting is near and dear to me. The first issue that I ever worked on when I started doing voter engagement work in 2016 was restore the votes. And so now that it's passed, it's been really exciting to be on the other end of it. But also, my husband has been a friend of Bill's for 19 years, as is my brother, as is one of my very dear friends. So a lot of my friends and family in the recovery community in the Twin Cities. And so very happy to be here talking about these things with this audience. I like to call this the Voter 101. We'll talk about restore the vote and then just mention some other things that are helpful for folks to know. You may have heard there's an election coming up, maybe you know about that, just a few weeks away. So just some information about voting in general as well. And then to start, I always just remind folks so we all are on the same page with foundations of who can vote in Minnesota. United States citizen, 18 years old to vote, but you'll note that says 16 or 17 to pre-register to vote. So we'll talk about that. A resident of Minnesota for at least 20 days and not currently incarcerated for a felony offense. So that's the big reason we're here. If you are not currently incarcerated for a felony offense, you can vote. And then voters under guardianship. If you're under guardianship, you can usually vote. People are often mistaken about that. So we note that unless the judge has specifically revoked the right, which is pretty rare, you can probably vote. You may need to update your voter registration, even if you have been a voter before. So if you've changed your name or your address, even if you moved to the apartment across the hall in the same building, you still need to update. If you haven't voted in a while, you would need to update your registration 4 years or more. If you're released from felony incarceration, your right has been restored, but you would need to register. If the court restored your right to vote, and then we also have a new permanent absentee voter list. So if you always want to vote by mail every single election, you would update your voter registration because that's where the box is to check to get on that list. And then a quick look at where we're at with the elections calendar, because I wanted to note that for this election, the register in advance deadline just passed. That was on Tuesday. So voters can still vote, but they have to register same day. So just want to make sure that people know that if you are not registered to vote, even though the deadline passed, you can still vote. Minnesota is a state that has same day registration. And then November 5th is election day. So to talk about same day registration, to make sure that folks are prepared, if you have a Minnesota ID with your current name and address, that's all you need. Bring that with you to your polling place and you can register. If your ID is out of date, maybe you've moved and you don't have your updated address, just bring a bill with you, like your phone bill or your internet bill, and you can show that on your phone. That shows that is where shows your address. If you don't have those, you can bring somebody with you to vouch for you. And that can be really helpful for people who are just kind of getting back on their feet. Maybe they don't have a driver's license yet or an ID yet. A registered voter who lives in your precinct, so maybe your neighbor or somebody who you live with, they go with you and they really it's vouching. They say, yes, I attest that this person is who they say they are. They live where they say they live. And they sign a document that says that they swear that. And that's another way for voters to get registered same day as well. You might be aware that we're voting for president this year. I don't know if you've heard that, but there are a lot of other things that we're voting for as well. We were just chatting about how it's good to know what's on your ballot. We're all also voting for US senators, US representatives. Every state house representative is on the ballot, and then judges as well. And depending on where you live, you might have some other things. If you go to our website, mnvotes.gov, you can click on a what's on my ballot tab and then type in your address and it'll pull up your exact ballot. It'll show you exactly who you're voting for, what you're voting for, and you can even print that out and bring it with you to your polling place. You can mark it up, bring it with you to your polling place as a cheat sheet. So that's good for new voters as well. 3 main ways to vote. Most Minnesotans still prefer to vote on election day, but about 25% of Minnesotans vote early. We have 46 days of voting in Minnesota. We like to frame it as election season, not just election day in Minnesota. People have been voting since September. So you can vote early in person or by mail right now. Also, if you have an unusual circumstance, there are some other ways you can vote too. So if suddenly you found yourself hospitalized on election day, you couldn't get to your polling place, you could have agent delivery where you would designate somebody that you know as your agent. They go to your county elections office, get your ballot, they bring it back to you, you fill it out, and then they bring it back to the elections office. And curbside voting for folks who maybe have a disability or can't get out of their car, just like your Target order that you get curbside. Also, people who had COVID in the last couple of years, they all of a sudden had COVID on election day, so they would mask up and vote from their car. 2 election judges, 1 from each party, so there's no funny business. Bring you your ballot to your car, you fill it out in your car, and those 2 election judges bring it back. So just other good options for folks if they find themselves suddenly not sure how to vote. And then we'd like to talk about why to vote, especially for people who maybe haven't voted for a while, for folks who maybe are, just having their right to vote restored, or young people. It's really how you impact the policy issues that are important to you. And you may think you don't care about politics, but there's a policy issue that's important to every one of you in this room, even if you don't think of it that way. Whether it's the criminal justice system, or affordable health care, or funding your kids' school, or who plows our streets in winter because we're Minnesotans and we really care about that. Those are all actually policy issues. And so those are impacted directly by the elections, which then also are how you stand up for your beliefs. Behind those policy issues are your beliefs and your values. It's how you can claim your power. And so, communities that vote in higher numbers get the power, right? The elected officials pay attention to them. And so when we have communities that are sitting out, they're missing out on that power. They're leaving that power on the table. It's also how you set an example for your kids. That's me, that's my family. There's those 3 kids and husband that we just talked about.
There's the cats.
They don't let the cats in the home. I drag my kids to every single election. The teenager's looking a little surly because I dragged her out of bed, but she knew it was coming. Every election, they just know this is what we're gonna do. We go vote. But also, that teenager has now turned 18 and she voted in the August primary. She knew exactly what to expect. She knew, okay, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna sign in and I'm gonna get my ballot and I'll go fill it out. So she wasn't nervous. She wasn't, if you think about an 18-year-old, what's one of their biggest fears? Looking stupid, not knowing what they're doing. And so it dispels that anxiety for them. And then it's how you engage in democracy, just at the most foundational level. And so going back to sharing the experience, not only for your teenager, but for folks who are in coming out of incarceration and who are on probation, parole, supervised release, they may be a little bit nervous. They haven't voted before. You're telling me to go into a government space and do something that I haven't done, or it's been a lot of years since I've done. So just sharing the experience with them, sharing how easy it really is, and that the election judges are really friendly and they want to help you. And just remind them, here's what a ballot looks like, help them see that. And here's, like I said with my teenager, you're gonna go sign in, and then you're gonna go to her and get your ballot, then you go to him, and just let them know what that process is so that they feel familiar with it. And then the extension of why to vote is why do voter engagement work? Why do I want you all to do this voter engagement work? Because it really does get higher turnout in that community. Communities that have nonprofits that do voter engagement work have an increase in voter turnout. That's been documented. So it really does make a difference. Then those communities are also stronger. Communities that are voting are usually looking out for one another. They know their neighbors and they're looking out for their neighbors. It helps you advance your mission as an organization, and then it helps amplify marginalized voices. So here is the law, the Restore the Vote law. If you are not currently incarcerated for a felony offense, they wanted to make that language very clear, that very bright line, so there was no confusion. Doesn't matter what kind of probation, parole, work release, supervised release you're on, if you are not currently incarcerated for a felony offense, you have the right to vote. We have,
So CIP can vote.
I don't know what that means, but yes.
Work release, boot camp.
Yep.
They're considered still incarcerated.
Yeah, boot camp is early release, so it's before their supervised release date, which is statutory.
Okay.
So if they're out
If they're not
on a
currently
release
incarcerated.
program,
Yeah.
they can vote.
Yes, yeah.
Can
The
the Fed?
few
Go ahead.
folks, I think you were just gonna ask this, the very few folks that cannot are those under federal supervision.
There you go.
Which from what I understand, the way I've been told, is that impacts tens of people in Minnesota, meaning not very many. We certainly wanna make sure we're not giving them the wrong information. But the state law doesn't trump the federal law.
And so as far as your information is, when you're in the federal reentry court, to be specific, because we have clients that are living
Yeah.
in our housing that do participate in that because they're out on federal supervision.
Yeah.
they are not eligible.
No, if they're under federal supervision, they're not eligible.
Okay,
And even for, so the language from some of these release, blanking on the word I'm looking for, but the language used for the people who are on some of these forms of supervision is they're told that they're technically still incarcerated, even though they're on release, correct? That they're still technically,
so it's unclear,
okay,
and even the federal probation can't seem to give us a definitive answer.
that's frustrating.
Because there's no question, the federal system, you do far more of your, if you get a 10-year sentence, you might do 9.5 years and get 6 months in the community.
Yeah,
Whereas state of Minnesota, there's statutory where you do 2/3 and you're in the community a third
yeah,
of your
Yeah.
sentence. So that's statutory, so that can only be altered by your behavior and who's good time and thing. So that's really the question that you got one over there?
I was gonna ask if you have any documentation that we could share with them,
Yeah.
with the federal folks.
It doesn't say
That
federal.
they know that they're not included.
this one does actually, this says on the back, I'm residing in a residential reentry center as a federal alternative to child detention. And then if the question is, can I go with that one is.
And the reason why I asked is, we work with quite a few people in the community and, if we had just something specifically handed to that person, that would answer, or it would be a much easier answer to some of the questions that we get.
Yeah,
And then also some clarity around the levels of eligibility around early release folks.
so what I was going, so I'll let me get back to the office and get that for you, the language for you that would help for the clarity for folks on federal. What I was going to say was, what the bill authors did was recognize that under the language, according to the people who are considered incarcerated, even, whatever those different various programs are, they're out, but they're still considered incarcerated. The bill authors actually wrote in a carve out for those specific, different forms of incarceration under supervised release to say that, no, unless you are currently incarcerated, unless you are actually behind prison walls, then you can vote. So any type of state release, supervised release, work release, probation, parole, any type of state release, if you are not currently incarcerated, then you can vote. Yeah.
So, and there's actually work release, so that's.
Yeah.
And you can vote.
Yeah.
And I assume in boot camp, you can vote, because that's an early release program.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, I would assume only the ones that are past the campus stage of that.
see, that's. The
Once they're out, once they're no longer behind those walls. If they're a part of I'm not familiar with the boot camp program, but if they're a part of a boot camp program that's not behind the walls.
They're addressing that facility.
If they're in the community as a part of that, like a halfway house or work release.
So it says right on this document, I was convicted of felony and I'm currently on work release.
Yeah.
I would consider CIP work release program, because it is a work, it's under Terry Burns supervision.
Oh, it
That's
is a
work
work release facility.
That's a work release.
Oh, okay.
So that's what she's saying, and that's what I wanted to hear. It's in the
Perhaps.
bill, right?
Yeah.
It's documented.
Yeah.
That, and so, and it says here in print, which is what I like to hand out.
Yeah.
So there's some of these over here, here, and here.
Yeah.
So this is exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah.
The CIP is an early release program, and it falls under Terry Burns supervision. So, ISR. All right,
Is that helpful?
Yeah, there's two facilities that maybe this presentation would be fitted for.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what.
I'll go anywhere and read the presentation, so you just let me know. So these, I'm happy to get you more of these. You can find these at mnbooks.gov if you want to share them electronically or print them and download them yourself. And then that's also, a social media graphic to share. We just really encouraging people to share. When the law passed, it impacted 55,000 Minnesotans, so a huge population. It's the largest expansion of voting rights in Minnesota since the late 1970s, when we dropped the voting age from 21 to 18. Huge population of folks. And there are still people who don't know that their right has been restored, or they don't trust it, you know, for these types of questions. Or they've been told for years that they're ineligible because they were. They don't wanna get in trouble. If you vote when you're ineligible, it's a felony offense. So there's good reason for them to not necessarily trust that their right has been restored or not be willing to take that chance. But that's where we really need trusted messengers like you who are doing work in the community to help us get the word out there. Because we really do, we didn't only want to pass the law, we really do want these folks to exercise their right to vote.
And they do have the federal in the last down at the bottom. And that's my understanding too.
Yeah.
Okay, even though it might not be VOA, you know, the halfway house. If they're involved with the federal reentry court, in my opinion, they are not eligible. But again, I don't know that we have exact clarification, and I'm not putting that on you because it is a federal issue. But I would recommend all of those that are involved in our housing not to vote. If they're.
And I can share with you, we do have language on the website too. We have a what do I do if I have a criminal record webpage, and I can share that with you as well, just for further language if you're looking for that.
Do you, and then I'll quit interrupting you, but it says residential reentry center. So to that language, to most of us, is a halfway house.
Yeah,
There's only two federal, like in the Twin cities. Yeah, Rosedale and Lake Street at VOA. So, but then if they're still involved with federal reentry court and reporting to that court monthly, you know, they have to report in.
yeah,
To me, it would probably be under that, but I guess that's the language I was.
yeah,
To be clear, the reentry court it's an opportunity for them to get a sentence reduction at the federal level. You know,
Okay.
So.
It's kind of like what MRRA is working towards at the state level.
okay. My understanding is that the folks that are under federal supervision are not eligible.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I believe that's my understanding too.
Yeah. And then the language is to check with your parole officer if you're not
Yep.
sure.
And I don't know, Terrell hasn't asked yet, but Rob has and others, and they're saying, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, the parole
Yeah.
officers are?
Yeah, there's issues like that.
Okay,
And so it's
we've-
inconsistent.
And
yeah,
there's also messaging that's been problematic from community leaders, like the We Are Free and things like that around us as well. So that's why.
okay. Let's make sure that you get what you need after
Well,
this, yeah,
yep.
yeah,
We'll work on it.
yeah.
Cause I was on the coalition Zoom where you spoke, you know, you were the lead for the coalition Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
And
the
that question
transition
was asked
coalition.
kind of there too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
with Kate Erickson's group.
Yeah,
And so, but yeah, so I'll stop. That
that's
was,
okay,
that-
we want to make sure we have it as clear as possible,
Yep.
and you know, that
it's
was.
very few individuals we're
Yes,
talking about, but
yes.
there's still those individuals.
And we don't wanna steer them wrong,
Right.
right, absolutely, yeah. That's what's in implementation has been a little bit frustrating, is that the bill authors really tried to be intentional about being very clear. Unless you're currently incarcerated, but then there are all of these other different circumstances that make it a little bit muddy, yeah. But yeah, I can share that webpage with you as well. So these, like I said, these are resources that we have available at mnvotes.gov, just really help us put the information out there. There was one state recently that I think it was Washington State recently passed a similar type law. And it didn't impact 55,000 people, it impacted about 24,000 people in Washington. And they tracked how many of those 24,000 voted in the next election, and it was only 612. And we really are trying not to be that. We're trying to learn that, take that cautionary tale. So Secretary Simon has gone to every single correctional facility and talked to the reentry classes there, the groups of people who are on their way out since the law passed. I've been at every transition coalition they'll let me attend, have spoken with the field services, the parole officers as many times as I can. And then the community organizations are really very important as well, so.
So is it not true that Minnesota is #1 in voting percentages?
Yeah.
And has been until last year where we were #3.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So that means this is important and a high level of
Yeah,
availability and clarity.
we
So,
were number one for 3 out of the last 4 elections. In 2022, we slipped to number 3 by a fraction of a percentage point. But, so we're really trying hard to get back to number 1. But the thing I'll note is if you think about it, the 55,000, and so very happy we are that we welcome them into the process, they've changed the denominator for who's eligible, and so it's actually harder for us to get back to number 1 now because of the 55,000, which we're not complaining, we'll take that, that's a great reason to not be number 1. But just all the more reason to make sure we get this message out there. We also want to make sure that Minnesotans know how many rights as voters they have, because you have a lot of rights as voters. And so this is what we call our Bill of Rights, and it has all kinds of information that we've already talked about, but also things like you have a right to time off work to vote. Your employer cannot dock you pay or PTO. You have a right to time off work. You have a right to vote if you're in line by 8 p.m. So people are excited about this election. Regardless of which side you're on, people are fired up, and so there may be long lines. Stay in the line. You have a right to get a replacement ballot if you mess up. People get worried about that. Just ask the election judge for a new ballot. You have a right to vote without being influenced. Somebody can tell you who they think you should vote for, but your ballot is secret. You get to choose. So you can bring this Bill of Rights with you or just share it in the community. Let Minnesotans know that they have a lot of rights. Another really big law that passed last year that I just always want to make sure folks know about is that 16 and 17-year-olds can pre-register to vote now. So they would use the same process that you or I would use to register, and they're pre-registering. Their information goes into a queue until their 18th birthday, and then it's activated and they don't have to do anything else. It gets them thinking of themselves as voters before they turn 18. And states that have passed this law, both red states and blue states, have seen their youth voter turnout increase, which is what we're hoping for. Minnesota also historically has the highest youth voter turnout in the nation, but it's still about 20 percentage points less than the older folks turnout. So we have another, more resources to share at mnvotes.gov. We have a flyer and a fact sheet there that you can share as well. The fact sheet notes that 16 and 17-year-olds can also serve as election judge trainees. Anybody can serve as an election judge, by the way. Any eligible voter can serve as an election judge. You get paid to serve, you have a right to time off work to serve. 16 and 17-year-olds have that same right. So when you tell them they have a right to skip school and get paid, that's actually when it's like blank stares until you tell them that, and then they're in. And usually their first question is, how much will you pay me? Which is, by the way, however much minimum wage is in the area that they live. But really looks great on a resume for anybody, whether it's a young person filling out college resumes or job applications. Serving as an election judge looks great on a resume. So very much encourage people to serve. And then this just always comes up no matter who I'm talking to, so I just leave this in here all the time. Where do college kids vote? Do they vote on campus where they go to school now, or do they vote back home? They get to choose. Where do they consider home? And then that's where they register and that's where they vote. They can't do both because that's a felony when you vote twice, but they get to choose. And then the only thing to note is if they're out of state for school, that the law still applies. They can choose out of state, but then they have to follow that state's laws. And Minnesota has some pretty accessible voting laws. Some states have some more restrictive laws, so they just need to be aware. Going back to being number 1, we have an education and outreach campaign that is helping us get back to number 1, is what we hope, which I want to just let you know is free and available to all to use the messaging that we have, the resources that we have, whether it's sample messaging that you can just copy and paste and put in newsletters and emails. You find that sample messaging at mnvotes.gov. Directs people to the tools that we have available online in 11 different languages. Also, we have this elections call center, real people on the phones. You call our office and you'll get a live person to ask any question that you have. Whether it's, am I eligible to vote? I'm on paper, to where do I find my polling place? We get all kinds of questions. But all of those materials are available at mnvotes.gov. And I wanted to just show you a sample message that we have in that Here We Vote campaign, just to give you an idea. That's just the social media message that we would encourage you to copy and paste and put out there. I just love the laser loom graphics, so I put that out there. I actually asked them to we're gonna have stickers now, laser loom vote stickers. So if you want some of those to get in the community, let me know. And then lastly, I always just wanna talk briefly about misinformation and disinformation, because sadly, it's still a major problem in not only our elections, but that's what we're here for. So misinformation is just people, misinformed. Disinformation is intentionally spreading lies. And there's a lot of that goes around both of those. We really focus on disagreement not being disinformation. You can disagree, like maybe somebody disagrees, maybe they don't think if you're on paper, you should be allowed to vote. That's fine, have that disagreement. But when you're spreading a lie about what the system is, like saying there are millions of undocumented citizens voting, that's simply not true. That's disinformation. So just make sure you get your information from trusted resources and have the conversations with people with an open mind. Somewhere along the way, they've been misinformed. And so just trying to tell them, lead with the truth. Tell them where the trusted resources are to get the truth. We of course think we're a trusted resource at the Office of the Secretary of State. So a couple of great websites. This one walks you through every step of the election process and how transparent our elections in Minnesota truly are. From Secretary Simon right now is at what's called a public accuracy test in Blaine. Every single county has to publicly test the voting machines where you or I could just go watch just for fun. It's not, it's actually kind of boring, but it's open to the public. It's very transparent. Serving as an election judge, that's how you go behind the scenes and see if you don't trust the system, go serve. We'll pay you to go behind the scenes and take part for yourself. You'll see that every step of the process has an election judge that's a Republican and a Democrat doing every single process. Like there could be no funny business. To the very end, when elections are certified, the canvassing board meetings where they certify elections are also open to the public. It truly is a transparent process. And then a fact versus fiction page, which highlights, for example, that, undocumented folks are not voting, and then we tell the truth behind that. And then, of course, the social media toolkit with some pieces of disinformation addressed in just little bite-sized fun facts for social media, to share on social media, if you're brave enough. But I'll note that all of the other materials that I've shared, these fact sheets, it's all nonpartisan. Our office is fully nonpartisan. We will never tell you who to vote for, or what party to vote for. I will partner with anybody who wants to do this work, and I have. So any of the information that we have to share, no matter what hat you're wearing when you share it, no matter you're personal or you're with an organization or a business, it's all nonpartisan, so very safe to share.
And we just handed out the criminal one, but there's what's new, so you have restoring the vote, automatic voter registration, so there's another one here.
Yeah.
That provides different, and then this one here is how to vote.
Yeah.
So don't leave without them if that's, they're gonna assist you. You can of course take a sticker that says I will vote.
Please do.
And go ahead.
Now, we have about 15 different flyers and fact sheets on covering all different topics.
She brought 3 here today pertaining to us.
Yeah.
Question?
Oh, actually, I'll let you finish it then.
That's it. Just help us spread the word. That's all this last slide is, we have these amazing resources. We have the websites, we have lasers and stickers. We have all the amazing resources, but we can't get it out there. We need people who are in the communities doing the work, The people in the community don't know me, they don't trust me, they don't know Secretary Simon, but they know you. You're a trusted messenger. So really just helping us get the information out there. And then that's my email and my cell phone number, because I really just can't emphasize enough how much I want people to reach out. If you have questions, if you're looking for more information or more resources, if you have another organization or event or venue that you think this type of presentation would be helpful for. I modify this presentation all the time based on the audience, so very flexible on what the content is, as long as it's elections and voting. But don't hesitate to reach out. I really can't emphasize that enough. And so then questions, do you have a question?
Yeah, first off, thank you, and voting is so important to people didn't get your message, go vote.
Exactly.
But why don't we do things like Florida where they have, each person has a ballot and they can track the ballot to the person? Like, we have technology that allow that, so why don't we do that?
We do, you can track your ballot, so. And that is one of them, so if you see there, track your ballot, the track your ballot tool. That's for voting by mail, I should say. So otherwise your ballot is secret, right? And Minnesotans have voted on this, and the legislature has listened to Minnesotans. Minnesotans very much want their ballots to remain secret. They don't want an election judge who's your neighbor, right? When you go to vote, your election judge is your neighbor. He and she live in your neighborhood. They don't want the election judges to be able to see, hey, they voted blue or they voted red. Like they don't, Minnesotans want our ballot secret. But when you vote by mail, you can track your ballot, and that's only tracking the ballot through the process until it gets back to the county elections office. And then once they separate the ballots to put it in the tabulator, then it becomes secret. I don't know if that quite answered your question.
Yeah, I'm just saying, take it beyond that, not what we're doing, but they have where they can have each person has a ballot. And then there's a way to know if you voted, like, then we know everybody's vote counted and
Yeah,
everybody's, anyway, that was your general question, again, love what you're doing, and I know Minnesota's way of. Lots of space. So
yeah, we are.
thank you for
Yeah.
continuing to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's, we do this work because we love it, but I would say, you know, with the absentee ballots, we have that ability, but once, you know, when you vote in person, your ballot is secret. I will note one of the processes at polling places that's oversaw by 2 election judges, one Republican and one Democratic election judge. Every single precinct has to have party balance of election judges. So whether you're the most rural red county and, you know, everybody there is red, you still have to have a party balance of election judges. To the deepest blue Minneapolis precincts, they still have to have party balance of election judges. So one of the things that happens there is, an election judge from each party in each precinct will count the ballots together and make sure that the number of ballots matches the number of voters who checked in that day. So it's not quite matching the ballot to the voter, but it is ensuring that, yes, the right number of voters matches the right number of ballots that we have. And if it doesn't, for some reason, if that's not the case, then they have to work to ensure that what happens, where do we find it?
Thank you.
So people who are not partisan, that vote independently of party lines, may not be election voters.
They can, good question. They have to have, I forget what the percentage is. They have to have a certain percentage of election judges have party balance, and then there's a remaining number of election judges that are unaffiliated. Yeah. I just forget what that percentage is. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Melanie.
And you can go, and you can leave this information, go vote right now, don't forget, in-person voting, early in-person voting is happening right now. And the 2 weekends before the election, we have expanded, so it's right now during business hours, during the week. But the 2 weekends before the election, we have, expanded early voting hours as well to go vote in person.